Hi, my beautiful friends. I'm Shayna Narrow, and I am helping people to end food addiction, step into their power, and manifest radiant health. And I want to talk about some of the reasons why people stay stuck, even if they really want to break free, even if they're suffering day in and day out with being controlled by food, and they know that there is a different way that's possible for them. However, there can be some main factors that prevent a person from really breaking free. So I want to talk about some of these in order to help you to start to look at yourself and see if some of these factors may be true for you. The beginning of really stepping into someone's power has to do with an increase in awareness. So just by beginning to look at some of these factors, you can increase your awareness and begin to take the next steps, and you can stop feeling powerless to change. So, real freedom from food, how do we get there, and why do so many people keep getting stuck in the same patterns and find themselves unable to really harness their power and unable to change their life, unable to change their habits? Let's talk about some of these core reasons. We've dealt with the whole issue of the survival brain. I am not going to go into that right now, but that is a huge topic and a huge issue that one needs to work with when they're really ready to go on this journey of transforming their life, transforming their relationship with food, and learning to become the master of their state so that their thoughts, their emotions are not controlling them at any given moment, being triggered by any given thing that could happen on any given day. So let's start here with the first point that I want to talk about in terms of real freedom, breaking free. One has to come to a point where they begin to realize that their perception of reality is not actually reality. This is a huge point of maturity that takes people time. Children, you can look at and see how whatever they perceive to be, they act as if that is real. Whatever they perceive, they believe is reality. However, as one matures, as some people mature, and this is quite a high level of maturity, there are plenty of adults that are still living their life under the assumption, the unconscious assumption, that what they perceive and what they believe is reality. And so that is going to be extremely limiting for somebody. And that is going to hold them back from experiencing true freedom in their life and making radical changes that will drastically alter their consciousness and the way they experience reality. So, again, at a certain point, a person can begin to just take a step back, look at their life, and begin to notice, observe, and realize that whatever they perceive is just their perception and is not necessarily reality. In fact, it never is reality. And another point here that's really important to touch upon is the evidence that one may have to support what they perceive to be true does not change the fact that what they are perceiving is not the whole reality. And so basically, the next part here, after a person comes to begin to at least have a suspicion that what they perceive is not actual reality, we're going to still continue to go on perceiving what we perceive. That's part of our mechanism of being. So we don't have to manipulate what we perceive, although we could, and we can learn to do that. That is a higher level. But the most important point is just to begin to develop a underlying feeling that what I'm perceiving is not necessarily reality. And then they can move to a second stage in really breaking free. And that second stage is what I call getting through the gap. The gap is the space between how I want to be and how I am now. It is the space between how I perceive myself to be and how I want to be in the future, and all the things that are separating us from this future state that we want. All these things that are separating us from this future state that we want is this gap that we need to go through. We need to peel off these layers of this gap and basically bring these two things into alignment. Bring into alignment who I want to be with who I am now. And so this video is not going to be about all the techniques, because that would take quite a long time. But just to say that the gap, all the things in this gap basically have to do with our false perceptions. They have to do with our emotions that are blocking our true self and this future self that we want. It has to do with our beliefs that are blocking us from this future self. Our thoughts that are blocking us. Okay, so as soon as we take this idea that our perceptions are not actually reality seriously, when we start to internalize that, then we are ready to begin to even question the beliefs, the emotions, and the experience that we are having of reality, because whatever our experience is based upon what we have learned, the habits we've learned, the emotions we've learned that actually repeat and become our personality. The beliefs that we've learned based on the evidence that we've gotten from our environment. So just to share with you a very, very good example, a metaphor for how we function, we can look at elephants who get trained to be in the circus or habituated to be able to help humans. So what happens is that elephants are taken from the wild and they have a chain that gets put around their leg or their neck, and this chain gets around a pole that is very firmly in the ground and cannot be moved by the weight of the elephant. And so the elephant then spends several months with this chain around its leg or neck, chained to this pole that does not move. This is really a little bit of a disturbing example. I apologize, but it's really important to understand it in order to understand how we function. So what happens is that the elephant fights to get free. It fights to break away and to be able to move more freely. But basically, after going through this process of trying and trying and trying to break free, it eventually comes to believe that it does not have the strength to break free. And then it stops trying to break free. This is when the trainers have succeeded in their goal, and then the elephant no longer needs to be trained. The elephant from that point on basically continues to act for the rest of its life as if it still has that chain around its leg. It no longer tries to run away after the chain is removed, after the elephant gives up. So why is this so important? Why does this give us such an important lesson? Because we basically go through a similar type of process when we learn certain behaviors. When we experience evidence in our environment to substantiate a certain belief that, let's say, I am not a good learner, and so then the person going through school keeps getting evidence from their teachers, their peers, their marks that they receive that they are not a good learner, maybe their parents, whoever it is. And if that evidence comes back enough, they come to believe that they are not a good learner based on this evidence, and then they basically automate that. It informs their behavior. Their behavior becomes generated by this belief, even though, regardless of whether the evidence or circumstances change, they become habituated to just function on their belief and base their behavior on that belief. So, to me, this is a huge lesson, and we need to realize the point of awakening here that many people do not realize before they step into their journey of healing is that we can unlearn anything. Anything that we've learned can just as easily become unlearned when we decide that we are willing to go through that process, when we realize that our perceptions are not reflective of what the reality is, and they are not reflective of what our true essence is about. And from that premise, we can then begin to unlearn these beliefs and these perceptions that we have formed. So it takes an openness, which brings me to my fourth point. Okay, so the first one was about changing our perception, realizing that our perceptions are not reality. Then we need to get through this gap, all the things that are separating the way we are now from the way we want to be, and close the gap. So we do that by unlearning, which is point number 3. The last point is the willingness to step out of our comfort zone. And this is huge. This is a quality that needs to be cultivated because our survival brain does not want to go into uncharted territory. We always have this instinctual drive to want to feel safe and to stay with what's familiar. Even if we are suffering, most people, until they become conscious and want to make these conscious choices and do the inner work, they are going to choose unconsciously to keep staying in their comfort zone, to keep staying with the behaviors that are familiar, because anything that is unfamiliar feels unsafe and feels dangerous and feels like a risk. People in general are afraid of failure. But the thing is, we cannot get anywhere in life. We cannot improve and expand and reach these new levels without taking the risk, without stepping into the unknown and into the things that are uncomfortable. It just is not possible to step into our power, which has not been familiar to us, unless we're willing to take the risk, unless we start to cultivate this trust and this ability to be okay with being uncomfortable. And what goes along with that brings me back to my first point, this willingness to a certain degree, to put aside our beliefs, to put aside what we've learned and what we've thought to be true. Unless we're willing to put those things aside, again, a person is never going to be able to be open enough to the truths that they need to bring in, that can basically banish the darkness, that can enable them to unlearn these things that they've learned that are holding them back. And this can be all the beliefs, the false beliefs and perceptions, the self-defeating thoughts. This can also just be basic rules that we've learned from society about what's a proper way to be in the world emotionally, or how a person should go about their career. There's so many things. It's really our whole reality is based upon all these different beliefs that we've either formed from our experiences, or we've taken in and have adopted as true from our society, from our adult figures that we were exposed to when we were younger. So this stepping into this zone of being uncomfortable is about, once we really can acknowledge that what we believe may not be fully true, there is at least room for something else that may be true, we can begin to say, I am willing to be open to something new, to something else, because I realize that something else may be more true, may serve me more, and may enable me to actually be able to manifest a higher vision. Realizing that who we are, how we feel, is at the very core a function of what we believe and how we feel. So we really have to be willing to become more open, be willing to question how we feel, if that's really true, what we believe, if that's really true, what we've learned, and if that's really true. And then we can truly be able to have somebody else guide us when we are ready, and when we're really willing to put in that effort, and when we're really willing to be open and move into a zone that may not feel comfortable. These are the things that really make the difference between people who I see who soar and radically transform their life, versus the people who don't and who say they want to, and they might receive the same teachings and the same techniques, but these things do not change them, because the change comes from the inside, and a person has to cultivate these different qualities that I just spoke about. So that is the difference between radical change and staying exactly the same. So I hope this was helpful for you. And if anybody wants to talk about what is really holding you back, and if you're feeling ready, like this might be the time for you to really make drastic changes in your life, end food addiction, and just step into your power and begin this journey of becoming who you know that you really are, you can click on the link and sign up for a free call with me, and I will help you to get clarity on what's not working and what you can do to really move forward. So that's it for now. Have a beautiful day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.